really centering racial, cultural, and linguistic identities in curriculum and in schools is just really powerful and creates opportunities for students to become excellent human beings and also share who they are and what they are and really create a space where everyone can connect and everyone can relate because we're all just human beings sharing our experiences.
Hi, I'm Mandy Morris. Welcome to the ML Chat podcast. We had an incredible conversation today with Dr. Wilkinson and learned a lot about what brings her joy in her work and the incredible capacity that she's building for teachers in the buildings where she's serving as an admin.
What I enjoyed about the conversation is that we're talking to somebody who's very much in the work, kicking off here in a few weeks, a new role as an elementary principal, very close to just those relationships with the teachers and students and the impact that can have in the success of her students and her team. And I just loved how she talked about it. I love this conversation.
She has a real human approach to all of the work that she's doing, whether it's supporting teachers or connecting with students, and a lot of humility in the work that she does. It was wonderful to talk with her today, very energizing, and I think that you're going to enjoy this conversation as well.
Let's go.
Dr. Wilkinson, welcome to the ML Chat podcast. We are really excited to get to know you today and have this conversation and learn about the awesome work that you're doing. Hi, welcome. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and where you are.
Thank you so much, Mandy and Andrew, for allowing me on today. I'm truly honored and excited to share a little bit about me, just a little bit about myself. I've been working in DC public schools for my 16th year now, on and off. Most recently, I was an administrator over our multilingual learner programs, dual language programs, and world language programs at a high school in Washington, D.C. And 3 weeks ago, I transitioned to be principal of an elementary school 10 minutes away. So just 3 weeks in. So super trial by fire right here, but excited to continue to support the community that have been working here for 10 years and also continue to work for our multilingual learners in that community to make sure that they continue to, become involved and really understand the importance of, how language learning works in all spaces. I also have a doctorate in educational leadership and did my dissertation about DC public schools, looking specifically at the secondary level about what program models worked best for students through 6th through 12th grade. So happy to also nerd out about that as well.
What a big jump. That is exciting. I'm curious, what are you most excited about making that jump to elementary?
I really like recess and lunch duty. I know some people have phobias or fears about that, but I just really like an opportunity to authentically have, conversations with students, play games with students, just sit and have a meal with students. I did that at the high school as well. I sit and eat my lunch with kiddos during lunch. So I just continue to do that with our littlest learners. So I'm super excited about that. And just field trips, field day, all those fun, joyous moments that teenagers, get the ick about. So.
And what are you going to miss most about high school? Because you're right, there's so much to love about elementary in that age. What do you miss about it?
I just really miss the opportunity to just help students figure out what the next step is and really just become, excellent human beings. And, all the graduation and prom are also really special moments, but just those interactions in the hallway where students with just checking on them, just talking about what's next, what's happening. It's just really a lot of students have come back and said how formative that was and don't always remember, elementary and middle school, even though we educators build on that and also help them become those people. But just those opportunities to do that is definitely going to be missed.
So you're in this leap, and I mean, school starts really soon. So you took this position weeks before the school year, and you're moving from an AP position at secondary into a lead principal position at elementary school. What are you feeling right now, getting ready to take on a lead principal position? What does that transition feel like going from AP to principal?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that I've had a really great mentors and administrators beforehand that really, as an assistant principal, gave me opportunities to have those leadership moments and lead people on projects. So I feel as ready as you could be. I'm also really fortunate in inheriting a school where the principal transitioned to another school in our cluster. So I've been really in communication with her, and she was really strong on systems and systems and structures. And so it was just kind of stepping into a really well-oiled machine. And so I'm really fortunate for the staff and the community for welcoming me. And I'm just trying to be a sponge and soak it all in and just trying to get to know more about the community so I can really start to, provide the support that they need to continue to do excellent things.
I am excited to learn more about your focus and the, research that you did and unpack that a little bit for 612 learners. I think there's probably a lot of learning there that you can share with all of us. Before we dive into that and, hopefully talk some about experienced multilingual learners in the secondary space, we've got a lot of experience. Let's get to know you a little bit and what brought you to education? How did your, path lead to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest of 4, and I always kinda just had I just did school, we did library, and I was always the teacher, so I really felt like, I just was an educator from a young age. And then my dad, besides being an accountant, also taught, like, Accounting 101 at the the community college, and so just really had a good time being a young person grading Accounting 101 papers was just, like, super exciting, and I was like, "Yes, I this is very nerdy, but I love it." So just that passion just drove me to get into education, and I really realized during my student teaching experience in New Jersey, I saw a real huge disparity between socioeconomic status and race in terms of what type of classes students were taking, and that really drew me to urban education, where I ended up and started my teaching career in DCPS at another high school here. And throughout that, have just been and also did 2 years there, and then went and taught worked at two K through eights in Newark, New Jersey, where I'm originally from, and then came back down here. So just really passionate about providing excellent opportunities for students, no matter their zip code, no matter their background, no matter who they are, what they are, or where they come from, really centering like racial, cultural, and linguistic identities in curriculum and in schools is just really powerful and creates opportunities for students to, become excellent human beings and also share who they are and what they are and really create a space where everyone can connect and everyone can relate because we're all just human beings sharing our experiences.
I feel like so much of like you who you are and like your heart that's already coming out is it's so human centered, right? Like I mean you're like from Andrew's question at the beginning, you're like, I love sitting and having lunch with students and playing games. I loved hearing that. Like, wow, that's really, really powerful. Playing games with students of all ages is really powerful. And it just sounds like from even your student teaching when you were, probably what, 20, 21 years old, you felt like your heart was just really drawn to maybe students that felt underserved, overlooked, were opportunities. And it sounds like that's still a passion that has just driven your career.
Yeah, 100%. It was funny because my student teacher, my mentor for student teaching, my co-teacher, so to speak, was actually like the antithesis of like what you do not do as a teacher. So I felt like that was also a trial by fire, but it was just really interesting to like, because of the types, it was high school. So the types of classes that he did teach was like, there was like the more academic, like the college level track. And then they also had the like kind of remedial students that were not passing the state assessment. And so just preparing and teaching those types of learners, I really kind of learned, like this is like a big disparity and also like why can't students read about Odysseus? Like why can't students, do all these things? Like it's about access and it's about again centering students as people and just giving everybody the opportunity to learn no matter what track they're on or who they are, what other conditions put them in the seat in front of you.
So I would love to explore something real quick. We've got a fun opportunity right here where you've got this amazing background, both in serving students who've been underserved, oftentimes a large portion of that population oftentimes is learning another or learning English as a new language. And now you've got a new building. And which is many of our audience finds themselves in this situation where they've got this passion and now they're in a new role. How do I move forward? And I'm curious just what's going through your head as you're preparing to serve this new school, how to best support those students. And maybe let's start with enrollment and what the population is. What's the work ahead of you? And how do you break that down? Where do your thoughts first go and how to serve these students?
Yeah, so we're close to like 45% of our students identify as like Latine, Hispanic, and the other half are African American, Black, and then I have about 4% white. It's in a neighborhood that's slowly been gentrifying, so I'm definitely seeing a little bit more enrollment with more white families. But it's very similar to like I said, my school that was at for 10 years. It's 10 minutes down the street or many streets, so to speak. So I'm excited excited because I am used to working with those type of populations and also understand that like many times in many ways society tries to, based on your race, try to like divide against like him versus us, or like if you don't, you can't speak our language. And like DC has a very specific language and vernacular, like any, area, along with like having other languages besides English in the school. It's about creating those opportunities for community and collaboration, which I'm really grateful for. This school community is they have a really great system where they have monthly potlucks, so to speak, or like family dinners where everybody comes together and there's dancing, and it's really like a family barbecue or a fiesta where everyone's bringing food and there's dancing, and the community loves those. And they also have father daughter teas, mother daughter teas. And so like this school communities are still saw the need about like, though despite all of our differences, we're still this school community and we should come together and celebrate. And they have had those authentic opportunities over food, over dancing, over celebrations to do that. So I'm super excited to continue those traditions and really figure out additional ways how we can continue to include more people into that community. Some things that I'm thinking about transitioning is just getting to know people. Everyone keeps asking me how I'm feeling. I'm just like, I'm just going to be a sponge because I know, you hear some things through the grapevine, but to be in a building is a totally different situation, especially now because we're in summer, only have a few staff members that have been in the building. So just really being a sponge and just looking at documents, looking at data, like, everybody does for typical entry planning, but it's really about having conversations. I had an opportunity last week to talk to the PTO president. In a couple weeks, I have a couple teachers that volunteer their time to come in and just have a conversation with me. And I just want to learn about them. I want to learn about the school, about what's going well, what are some things that potentially need to be improved upon, and then what I can do to help them as a leader. And so it's really kind of almost like doing a dissertation or research. It's just right now, I'm just like the research gathering phase and just getting in more information. And then once I kind of understand what's going well for our school and what are some ways that I can help to continue to strengthen what's already going well, then I can kind of start to take action probably around October, November, once I kind of like really get really get into the meat and potatoes and the gears of the school year.
I think that's an indication of a really great principle. Your first move is like, I need to learn, right? Like, I need to get to know this community and I need to learn all of the things that I can and make connections. And I think that's, it really is. I'm excited for your teachers. I'm excited that that's like how you want to approach that because I think, you've been on the other side as a teacher too, right? And like getting a new admin can be stressful because, especially for people who have been in the building for a long time or maybe are attached to like, this is how we do things, right? Like, this is how it's done. So I think it's just a strong indication of a great leader that you're like willing to go in and to learn and to listen and to build on systems. It sounds like some really great systems that are already in place.
No, that 100%. And I love how such a strong leader. Just it goes back, I think, so core who you are is to relate to people. You have to first listen and just see what's there and see who they are and how they see the world. And then you're in a position that you can share and offer. And can we jump back real quick to these monthly potluck barbecues? That is awesome. I have never heard or seen anything like that. I know that all schools are doing different parent gatherings and different things to events around, but never described or never anything like that. That is phenomenal. And what a great way to unite your community. And especially in your situation where it's a very diverse community and a lot of potential to be to not be united. And so it sounds like you've got a great foundation going in building community and connection. And it's exciting.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I haven't experienced it yet, so I can definitely report back once I attend it. But I saw a lot of pictures, and anytime anyone describes a community, they're like, "Oh, you have to come to the community dinners." I'm like, "Yeah, I want to be there. Like, I can't wait to bring my 4 and your 8-year-old there so they could also run around and cause havoc too." Because again, it's about family and community, and like people celebrate together when there's food and when there's something exciting happening. And so I'm excited to experience those and just again become more involved in the school community.
Andrew, that's a great call out because I feel like, a lot of what we see with like, it's like culture night and it's like one time a year and it's a very like fabricated experience, right? Where it's, it's put on like you're putting on something and what you're describing is like family dinner on a Sunday afternoon, right? Where you're like, It's come as you are, it's be who you are, it's genuine and authentic. What a cool approach to building community. It really it feels different from what we see a lot.
Don't get me wrong, they take Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month very seriously too. But again, this is like in a because we have to celebrate those identities within our building. But again, yeah, it's about doesn't matter who you are. Everyone celebrates over food. Everyone celebrates over dancing. And so what you get, like I said, what a great system in place already for the school. And I can't wait to bust a move and to bring something to the table. Probably forks or soda or something because I don't really cook, but I'll bring something.
When you say bust the move, are you talking about bust the move as in cooking the food you're gonna deliver, or are you talking about
We'll do some wobble, the kids all like the peanut butter jelly time, we'll get all.
oh man, you are gonna be the coolest principal. They are gonna love you.
It's so good. So good.
So I do have a follow-up question, and I realize that the question I'm asking, because I love the answer you gave around your role. You see yourself as going in and just listening, of just seeing, like absorbing. And I think that's absolutely the right answer. And so I don't want to ask this question about your building because that would prompt you to speculate. But maybe we just talk about the theoretical building or something you've seen in other buildings, your other roles. As you're going in, or as leaders are going into new roles and print, like what are key areas that come to mind of, hey, these are areas to be aware of or focus on to really build a strong, whether it be culture, instructional unit. What are the areas that are top of mind? These are the areas I want to focus.
Yeah, I think something that I still have a lot of questions about is like what the meeting structures are and what the intentions are for those meetings. Basic, because again, like having a planning meeting with a staff member versus, having a more in-depth conversation like with a parent about academics or behavior serve really different purposes and are also really important. And we also know that like teachers have only so many hours in the day. And we only have so many hours in the day. And so that's just something I've been thinking about is like what structures and for meetings are in place, what are the intentions for those meetings, who's at the table, what additional resources or people need to be included or removed based on other things that they have. So that's something that I've been thinking about. Also just been like trying to also listen to kids. I'm really fortunate that we have a summer camp in our building, so I've had a few opportunities just to ask them questions and learn about themselves. But a lot of times, especially in elementary school, we don't always talk to kids, or they do typically do like your upper elementary school. So I'm really excited to think about, based on the structures and the systems that the school already has, how do we have more opportunities, outside from like your SGA or just, the student that has also been very confident to, articulate and advocate for themselves. But how are some ways to get kids to really say how they're experiencing school? Because again, that shows up in culture, behavior, how they talk to how families interact with school, obviously academics, relationships with teachers. So that's something that I've been trying to be a little bit more intentional about, to think about what's the student experience and how do we take what a student is saying beneath that song and figure out what things we need to change, adapt, or amplify depending on how they're experiencing school.
So again, going back to the relational piece, I just love how aware of how we relate to the world, how you relate to your students, and the role that plays in the learning experience. That's phenomenal. Mandy, you're going to say something.
Well, gears a little bit to the secondary. We've been talking about this big transition you have and going back to elementary school. And the way that we build relationships with students at secondary is different. Yeah, you called out earlier, there's similarities too, right? Like our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, they want to be heard and they want to be seen. And just as much as our little kids, but the way we go about that is different. And I would love to hear you talk some, these last years you've been in the secondary space, and I'd love to hear you talk some about what has relationship building looked like in the secondary space? How has that impacted your ML population in particular? And, any thoughts or advice you have around like, we did this as a system and it worked really well, or like, these are some learnings and some takeaways of things we tried that didn't. And any advice or thoughts you have about that, I'd love to pick your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I think with, like teenagers, generally, a lot of them will come find you and tell you how they're feeling or what's going on, which is good. The last couple years from my previous principal has been really intentional about like having structured like focus groups with students based on different foci. So a lot of this past year, we kind of reshaped how teachers experience in professional development within our school, and we specifically called a focus group and tried to have it mirror the demographics, language abilities, special education status of our building, and really ask about how are they experiencing their classroom and more about academics. And that was a little bit hard for some teachers to hear based on what their students were saying, but it was also really helpful for us for data collection about like we've been working on like co-teaching and having like parallel teaching and not like one teach one assist and like stations. And so we asked students about how are you experiencing this? What does this look like? How does this feel like? And some students are like, I don't understand it. And some are like, I really like having being in a small group with my teacher, right? Or I really like that I know the stations every day and I know what the expectations are. And it's not like we're not doing something different every day. We're not like just like reading from a text and writing. That's been really helpful and kind of understanding the student experience. So I'm excited to take that to the elementary school and also figure out like different opportunities to collect data with students either at recess or actually having those focus groups. Specifically for multilingual learners, we always made sure we had like a translator or a friend in there so they can share their experience and also, have a comfortability with language so that they could also participate. And so that's been really helpful because a lot of times our multilingual learners aren't asked the questions because, have hesitations either because are not fluent in a language or, it makes students feel uncomfortable having a conversation. And so just either finding allies or having staff translators there so they can feel comfortable. And that's been really helpful to try to continue to get that voice. I know I'm not at the school anymore, but I know the focus is to have we have like girl groups and boy groups at our school for students based on behavior for tier 2 and tier 3. And so the focus for this coming year is having that be more inclusive of our multilingual learners. Because again, our multilingual learners, at least my previous building, didn't really have too many behavior infractions. And so just because they're quiet doesn't mean like they don't need help and they don't need support. And so I'm excited for my previous school to kind of have a more intentional focus with those groups of students. But again, also thinking about like, what does that look like in my new space? I can't wait to just, again, be at recess, be at lunch, talk to kids and just really kind of see what their experience is and how they're feeling.
I love hearing you talk about your students and how to connect to them. I'm curious, is that just kind of how you're wired from childhood? Or is there maybe some experiences that along the way that really hit you and you kind of like aha moment of, oh no, this kind of shaped that have been formative for you?
That's a good question about wired. I mean, I feel like I probably am wired because I'm the oldest of four and there's always just a lot of voices. And so just needing to like make sure you hear everybody and just collaborate in a way. I would just say like I've been through a lot of different schools and started new a lot of times. And I just come to realize like I don't have all the answers and that's okay. And really like turning to others. And I think that's really, again, modeled through my previous principals and like mentors is like, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to seek for clarity. And again, just really like our students are a focus in education and they should have a say about how they're experiencing things. And so that's really been a push as well. Obviously, like educators too. Educators are so crucial and do the hard work of being in front of students every day, teaching and doing all the million and one things that they have to do. But again, for students, it's not always that schools don't always have the opportunity to talk to students. And so kind of creating those opportunities and whatever frequency and forever focus that you have is really important.
And I love that. Do you have any stories that come up for you of a time where more than just giving students instruction or direction, that taking the time to connect with them and relate with to them made the difference?
Yeah, it was so funny. The last day of school, I had a junior come up to me and give me a hug and say, have a good summer. I asked him what he was doing for the summer. And he's like, okay, I'll see you next year. And I was like, I'm not going to be here. I'm sorry. And he was just like really distraught, Andres. And this is just a kiddo that sometimes he would just be in the hallway because he just needed a break or just needed a moment. But overall, he's like a really good kiddo, a really good friend to a lot of students and really strong academically. And he just mentioned to me like, you were just always ask me how I was doing like every day and to check on me every time you saw me in the hallway. And like, I actually really appreciated that because not a lot of people asked how I was doing. And then there's some days I was really having a hard time and I really appreciated you like checking on me and also saying like, oh, I like your shirt. I like your hair. So I just like, it's just like moments like, and again, he's our multilingual learner. He's more of a long-term English language learner. But again, they're just people. We need to check on each other. We're a village here too. So it's just about checking on kids. Yeah, that experience really touched me a lot because again, I did not know the impact of me just saying hello, checking on him every day really had on his experience here. And he's already said, you need to come back and visit. So I'm marching orders from Andres to come back and visit. But yeah, again, it's about we're all humans. And again, our kiddos are why we do it. And so just checking on them whenever way feels authentic and meaningful for you and that student.
Something you said made me think about an article I read recently from the well section at the New York Times, and it was like how to have conversations that aren't how are you? Like it's for adults, right? But we you have such scripted responses like I'm fine, everything's fine, or yeah, it's great, I'm good. And so the whole thing was like essentially sentence starters for like having deeper connections with people. And one of the sentence starters was complimenting someone on what they're wearing or what. And I think teachers who emphasize relationships are really good at that. But I think it's one of the, like you said, million and one things that educators do that they don't necessarily, it's not that someone taught them a framework, it's not that they like read a book about it or like it's just like so many educators are drawn to the work because of relationships and they're showing up. But I love that you're identifying how powerful that was for that student and how that relationship move is. And I think it's, some kids, you're going to always get that. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's like one of the sentence starters or like frames for us adults to be able to go a little bit deeper and dig a little bit deeper to have and create those genuine connections. You mentioned like maybe you're doing that in the hallway sometimes, right? Because as an admin, you can float through hallways, whereas a teacher's, I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about like what were your moves that you did that were super intentional to make those connections with students?
As a teacher or as an administrator?
Both.
Yeah, I would say as a teacher, I would just like hug every kid or like high five them every morning as they came in. I always taught first period. And so, like, teenagers first thing in the morning are a very special creature. But just like, I would just welcome kiddos. And there's a couple kids that would come in late and just like, hey, how you doing? Just give you a second to set up. And then once they were kind of sat and settled, myself or my co teacher would kind of welcome them. And so, again, it's just like a human connection and finding opportunities to get to know students. I know a lot of times teachers use like do nows to do like would you rather, some other like crazy questions that also help foster, or doing brain breaks like that too. But that's just kind of a way to like kind of start the conversation and find out like what are these interests for these students and how do they kind of see or have the experience based on, like, would you rather fly or be invisible, right? Like what's their rationale for that? But again, that also translates language, like like being able to fly and being invisible, like can have two different, very different things, and it doesn't matter your language or cultural identity or racial background. It's like maybe I just want to get to here and to, maybe I want to go to Tahiti and I just want to be there, right? Or like maybe I just want to like sneak around and like sneak into movies. But just like finding ways to do that as an educator, I think is what a lot of teachers do and also really helpful. And again, language shouldn't be the barrier because we all have experiences. I think for an administrator, it is a little bit harder, especially as like if you're going into classrooms, you don't want to like upset the ecology of the classroom or the flow of the classroom. So again, I think it's just like greeting kids at arrival, dismissal, asking them questions, lunchtime transitions is really the opportunity. And then a lot of our kids do extracurriculars. And so just like attending those or just having like, if you're not able to attend them, like knowing the score of the basketball game or whatever is going on at their, after school has also been really helpful to kind of like start the foundation for relationships and then building on that, just like having conversations and checking in with one another.
Dr. Wilkinson, to take a step back, you talked earlier about having structures for small group instruction in secondary. And we know small group instruction is just like part of the air that elementary school breathes. Like that is so baked into instruction. And in secondary, it really, buildings are in different places. Like it depends on where admin are and where teachers are of what small group instruction looks like in secondary. I'd love to hear you talk through two different parts of this. What did it look like to roll out small group instruction in a high school? And I'd love to hear you unpack a little bit more specificity around how did teachers respond to that and students respond? And I'm thinking in particular around the relationship piece. So, having those small groups does allow teachers and students to feel more connected. And, when you've got 3 or 4 kids in front of you, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about the impact it had for your school.
100%. I want to kind of take a step back. And so at my previous school, 42% of our population were identified as multilingual learners. And before my previous principal arrived, it was, a separate academy for those students versus others, just general education, along with our special education students being in separate spaces too. And so they charged me and to lead our multilingual learner leadership team to really just say, like, we are going to eliminate all these shelter classes with the exception of kids who've been in the country for less than 12 months. And I want kids in all spaces because I want them to have access, because we know research says that like master schedule for secondary is a key limitation for some students being able to get to post-secondary access and option. Yeah. So spent that first year just really planning what the next 5 years looked like for that integration, and also talking to staff about like we are transitioning into co-teaching. Like all of multilingual learners will be in all spaces. And so like talking about like how all teachers are multilingual learner teachers and special education teachers, identifying about translanguaging, receptive bilingual, and some staff even identified like, yeah, actually I can understand my grandmother when she speaks Vietnamese when I'm not able to answer, right? And so like just also talking about how language is like language output and input is a spectrum. And so like all of us have had those opportunities where we may not been able to understand, or we've been able to understand but not been able to communicate. And so through that kind of first like half year just going through that, just got all the anxious energy out, all the questions, just really kind of help educators like understand what was happening. So that was 4 years ago. So now completed 3 years of our integration where our multilingual learners were everywhere. And so really did some really intentional training for about like understanding WIDA indicators, what students can do on each of the levels, important scaffolds for students, making sure all teachers had both content objectives and language objectives, really showcasing some excellent multilingual learner specialists in our building who are doing excellent things. And then we realized from our first year that despite us having integration everywhere and most of our multilingual learner specialist teachers being in co-taught spaces, it really felt like the general education teacher was at the front and our specialists were kind of at the back like aides, despite them, being certified teachers. And so in thinking through with our academic leadership team, we kind of shifted our professional development from our teachers. Instead of just doing like, we're doing scaffolds, we're providing all these resources, to be like, no, like we have two educators in the room and you both are experienced and have different qualities to you and can educate kids in various different ways. And so really kind of focused for our instruction became what we called parallelism, and making sure that every classroom, no matter what time of day it was or what the subject was, that each teacher was teaching either parallel or in small group stations. Singleton's had those stations too, when thinking about your student data, your levels. If students had missed a significant portion of their learning, what are some ways for them to kind of re-enter your classroom, and what kind of support did you need to give that student? So that was really what we've been doing the past 2 years, is just thinking about like, what is parallelism, what is parallel teaching, how to use student data to really think through. And it doesn't matter if you're a multilingual learner, general education student with the IEP, or a combination of all those. Like students master and acquire information in different ways and at different times, and may do really well on one skill but not another. And so really using that student data and really just saying like, you're both teachers in this space. It's not like you're the specialist, you're the general education teacher, you're all teachers for all these students. And how do we kind of really use your skills and what the students need and the data to really make sure that instruction is happening. So the intentional focus with planning, walkthroughs, coaching for teachers is really around that. And so definitely have a way to go, but thinking about transitioning to my new building, that's something that they started last year that they said it was not as successful. So I'm excited to see, again, listen and learn and see what kind of supports and what ways to kind of strengthen that co-teaching model at the elementary level. So again, it's not just like the person's in the corner or just working with a small group of students, but like, language and access is for everybody. And so how do you kind of really use those adults in a way that's meaningful, that allows for kids to really excel?
That is big work. And something that I heard you say that I really appreciate is that, like, even if the first year is messy, I think you described it as like the first year was like, get all your anxious energy out. So, like, all the questions, I love that you and your prior admin just created space for that, because I think there's nothing more stressful as an educator as like, it's, pre service, kids are in the building in 4 days. And guess what, guys? Like, we're starting this whole new big thing. And like, good luck, everyone. I love hearing you as an admin and, your team of admin having that approach of like, hey, we're just accepting this first year is probably going to be a little bit messy. That's okay. This is the time for like and we're going to learn from it, and we're going to listen, and we're going to take feedback. Your human-centered heart goes beyond just students. It's about teachers as well. And we know that students can't do their best if teachers feel like they're not in a space to do their best. So I feel like It's really cool to hear you from an admin perspective, just creating space and holding space for teachers to also have like their freak out moments.
No, we all do. I mean, I just sat in training for our district for the past couple days, and there's a couple new initiatives, and this time and space to also have my little freak out before I think about like how do I contextualize this for my staff, and what does this mean to roll this out in a way that's meaningful and not on, hey, school starts next week. You have to set up your classroom. Like you have to like also go to all these trainings, like this thinking through. And that's something I've been thinking about with my new leadership team too, is like, how do we, that week before kids start is really important for teachers. There's some things that, we have to go over. We have to go over like emergency procedures and go over data, and they have to go to trainings. But like, what are some ways that like we can kind of schedule out throughout the September to really kind of like cascade the learning instead of like fire hose the week before and then getting upset with teachers about not retaining it when they're like, there's all these things coming at me. So we're definitely something I've been thinking about, because again, teachers are doing the hard work of being in front of kids every day and trying to, differentiate, provide authentic opportunities and all the other things they have to do. So just what are some ways to think through and have it manageable for teachers so that they could be successful?
I wanna be on your like, as I'm listening to this, I'm, like, thinking about if I'm one of those teachers, and what I'm hearing isn't lower expectations. What I'm hearing is, like, Mandy said, create space, and, "Hey, let's embrace the expectations with the space to, hey, it's scary,
Mhm.
that's normal, that's okay, I'm here with you." And as I'm listening to you, I'm like, "Okay, the feeling I get if I'm one of your teachers is, like, the expectations are high, but we're in it together. Let's just start. Let's just take the steps one at a time. Let's go." And that's like a great energy, not just for in creating space, but you're also like expecting the most for your is as I'm kind of channeling that feeling right now. I'm like, that's what I want from my leaders. So yeah, can I be on your
Come on, go on down, Andrew.
I was at a conference recently, and the way it was structured was just unlike any conference I've ever been at. They had a lot of very purposeful talk and, like sentence frames set up for it and accountability for the talk at the tables. It was so cool. And it created relationships at a conference unlike I've experienced in the past. And I mean, kind of like a PLC almost would in a building, right? And in one of those conversations, a teacher who was there as part of like the conversation flow, she had said that like one of her strengths was pivoting in the classroom and responding to students' needs. And then later, as the conversation like got more intimate and like the probing questions were like, oh, like tugging at your heart. And she said, actually, if I'm being real, when I say that I pivot, I think sometimes I lower rigor because I don't know in that moment how to hold kids accountable. I don't know what scaffold to use, or I don't have the scaffold, or I don't have the time, or I've got, so many kids that need so many different things at the same time. And she's like, I'm saying that I pivot, but I think I'm really just like, I don't know what to do for that student. So I like lower the expectation. And I thought it was so brave of her to be that honest and vulnerable, because it is really hard. It's really, really hard in the moment in the classroom to be able to make those pivots. And what I am hearing about the environment that you're trying to build with teachers is like a space for those open conversations and for that vulnerability. And so much of our professional development in the field, it doesn't really create space for that. It's more of like, here's your new directive, you have to do this thing. And I love that you called out like you're trying to create a structure to avoid like the fire hose of pre-service. And it's more of like a slow rollout, which also inherently creates more space for just to like have those honest and vulnerable conversations amongst themselves and with admin. But that's where the power of change comes from, right? Is when a teacher can say I'm lowering rigor because I don't know what to do in the moment. Like that's where the real learning comes.
Yeah, I mean, but we've all done that before. We'll had a kid in front of us and you just don't know what to do and you still have like 30 minutes left on the schedule. So like you just do what you have best in the moment. But that was so brave for the teacher to say. And I think that's what the power of, going to conferences or talking to other educators or using those professional development communities, professional learning communities, is that, if it's in a space where teachers can trust and they feel like the support that they're going to get is not going to be punitive or evaluative, then that's where the learning really happens, and their teachers are able to take risks and to be innovative to support students. So yeah, that was really brave of a teacher. I don't know if I would have been so upcoming with strangers, but yeah, that's again a testament to the moderators of that conference and that session. And then how do we think through conditions for our teachers to have those opportunities to be their authentic self in the a way that's meaningful and productive and also, creates, shared learning.
Andrew, I felt like this is like this is your happy space, like getting into like I can tell he's reflecting and thinking, getting into all of the emotion behind the work. I mean, it's hard work, it really, really is. And I think because like you said earlier, Dr. Wilkinson, like a teacher's day is students in front of them. And when you're on all day long. And like that inherently does not create a lot of space for reflection and then that reflection impacting your next steps. And I think that's the part of if you aren't an educator, if you haven't been an educator in the classroom, that is really hard from the outside to understand. And I think it's really important for admin when you think about, building out what systems look like for professional learning or communities within your school. You create that space with a lot of intention. It doesn't just happen on its own, right? Like teachers have an opportunity to create spaces for their teachers to take a breath, to have reflection. I think that's like a really powerful like next move that's needed for teachers to be able to grow their craft and their practice.
What we've done this past year is kind of split teachers into interdisciplinary teams. Because again, like a lot of time, like the English department, especially for secondary, the English department will sit together. The multilingual learner specialists will be together. The PE teachers are together, and so we're intentional about having interdisciplinary because again, we don't have those opportunities where you get to talk to other teachers from other disciplines about what works for them and what challenges they also face, which are many times very similar challenges. I really had an opportunity for a small group of about 15 teachers to do like a book study on their own where they led the questions in the inquiry, and then we work with them about like what that production looked like in their classroom. And so transitioning into this new school, I'm thinking about like again just being a sponge and just learning, but just thinking through like as I continue to collect more information and learn more about the school, I've also been thinking about like how do we really differentiate professional development for teachers, because again, like a novice teacher needs something very different from experienced teachers, and teachers need different supports at different times of the year, especially when you come closer to like assessments, or when you're introducing a new unit or a concept, or if there's a new curriculum rollout. So that's something I've been thinking about too going to this year, like probably to start like term 2 around November, like once I get to know teachers and the students and the needs, like figuring out like how do I, within the structures that's already been set, create spaces for teachers to work with one another and to kind of really be intentional about professional development. Because again, our experienced teachers need something very different from newbies or teaching for 5 years, or even teachers that have switched subjects or grades too.
Yeah, and Mandy, you're right. I've been pausing and absorbing this for a bit because this is just a part that really strikes near to my heart. And it's also a spot where sometimes I know it's a little bit of my soapbox, so sometimes I pause and I'm like, okay, I don't want to take over with a filter that I tend to see a lot of and see the way I see life. But yeah, I guess what I'd add to what you're just saying is that I think that we do a lot to figure out how to best serve our students. And when you stop and think about it, our teachers are students who need these things, giving them that space to be themselves and to show their uniqueness and apply themselves and take on new hard things in bites, and having that space right there is so important, and as well as creating that space, both teachers for themselves, and then hopefully the structures can help reinforce the space to breathe and reflect and sharpen. It's what our students benefit from, it's what we benefit from, and helps us show up and be our best selves.
Yeah, something that I've been thinking about too is again, like because I'm coming into a new space, like a lot of the structures have already been set. And so just thinking through, and again, this is, for other school leaders to think about too, is like if within the structures you have already set, how do you kind of innovate and just use that time differently? And so I was at a training this week with my instructional coaches and my assistant principal, and we were talking through like what does it look like for teachers to co-plan in a meaningful way with, their specialists or aides or other people. And again, there's just not enough hours in the day. And so we were trying to be innovative about like it's a requirement to have a faculty meeting once a month for an hour after school. And so we were trying to, just thinking through like what if that faculty meeting isn't reviewing field trip requests and, other operational things that could be in an email or a newsletter, how maybe if that's a time for other teachers to present on what's going going well in their classroom or something exemplary that they're doing in a way that is, there's no kids in the building after school, except, obviously aftercare, but there should be no kids there's no kids in front of you. You don't have to worry about picking kids up from lunch or, somebody has an accident or whatever like that. It's just like dedicated space. You already know that's for adults. And so just thinking through what does that time look like. And so again, it really about, like you said, creating space for teachers to have that, but also, working within the system that you already have to really be innovative and really thinking through like, is this a good use of time, and what is a priority, and what do we need to really think through for this time?
I want to like pull on this thread a little bit more. I was talking with an admin recently. He's been in education for, I think he said 50 years. He had just retired. And he, towards the end of like maybe the last 15 years of his career, he was an admin for a preschool building. It was like through the public school system, right? And he was talking about how he would section off a part of his budget every year, and his whole staff, they would do a conference together. He was just remembering the camaraderie that it built and the relationship bonding that it built. And your notes that you filled out for today's podcast, the word joy caught my eye. And we've talked with some of our guests in the past, about joy, just like the joy of what brought you to this work. And that really stood out to me from, the notes that you had submitted, and hearing the conversation just about, teachers and the connection to the work and the connection to the students. It's reminding me of this admin. And I was sitting there listening to him like, man, that's so cool. Like, I love that you did that. Like, you had such intentionality around building relationship with your teachers, and that joy that through the entire year for them and all of the work. And he was talking specifically about when there were times that he had to say no if they had a request, or if there were times where it was like, there's sometimes some sharp feedback around areas of improvement, but there was the relationship that was there. And then that created a foundation for feedback throughout the school. I feel like fewer and fewer people are attending conferences as budgets just have shrunk for that. I would love to hear you think some about, in your 15 plus years in education, how do you foster in the building? And you just spoke to it a little bit, but how do you foster that opportunity for just connection and relationship that we got when we got to go away to conferences together that might be harder to do now?
First of all, I want to be on that administrator's school team to go to conferences every year. Just being in it as a parent, like having in a hotel room by yourself without little people and ordering room service sounds amazing. But I think, again, it's just thinking about structures that are already in place. And there's a couple of times at my previous school where you just use faculty meetings just to have meditation, or some people who are dancers and have some dancing or yoga, or just showcase some of their talents. And just, again, finding ways within the structures that you do have in your school to have moments where it's not focused on data or teaching or all the other things that educators are called to do, but just really moments of connection in ways that is meaningful and feels rejuvenated. We had a social worker at the last session we did, where she just did aromatherapy, and we just sat there in the library and just made our own scents, a little spray bottle so we can spray when we just needed a little break. And I had no idea that she knew a lot about aromatherapy unless she would kind of ask teachers about what are some ways that you can lead and kind of show up. So I think just, again, finding ways to do that too. And then opportunities to celebrate is just leaving a note for somebody when we have huddles or faculty meetings, giving people a shout out or allowing other people to give each other shout outs, and just really celebrating each other, not only through their professional accomplishments and also personal, I think is ways to kind of bring connection to. And again, it takes time to build trust and build those relationships. So again, that's something I definitely been thinking about, in ways to build those deposits for those emotional bank accounts that I now have with my new team. But again, just thinking through like, how do you just ask them about themselves, create connections, and then again, finding structures within the existing school day or school schedule to really think about how do we showcase one another and just have a good time.
It has been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed it. We're getting near the end of our time. So we've got a few questions we want to ask, and I want to kick it off with just a real simple one. I would love to know, for administrators who are jumping into a new role, and now it may be as a principal as you are, or maybe it's an ML director stepping into that. What advice do you have for somebody stepping into a newer role?
That's a loaded question. I feel like the splat is going to appear from the ceiling. I think it just goes back to what I said earlier, that it's okay to feel like a novice and okay not to have the answers, and really just lean on your own personal networks or finding somebody that has a similar role, maybe in a different school or a different space to kind of be like your partner or your pal. So if you do have questions, you can ask them and just kind of just get some clarity. And I think just be a sponge. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to just receive information and not necessarily have an answer or be able to process it, and just give yourself some time and space to just be like, you know what, that's a really great question. I don't have the answer right now. I'm happy to get back to you. That's something I've been definitely doing a lot myself moving into this new role. But again, it's about learning, and I'm a novice. So I'm new to this school community. I'm new to this role, and it's okay to be a newbie. I'm gonna make mistakes. It's okay. Just giving yourself some grace.
Yeah, I love it. Embrace the vulnerability, embrace the reality that we can't do everything.
100%.
That's cool. Okay, Mandy, you the next one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this technically would fall into the category of rapid fire, but I have to ask. I mean, you've got two young kids, 4 and 8. You're working full time. I know what the life of an elementary school admin looks like. So, it's a lot of hours, and you have a PhD. Like, how have you balanced all of that? And what advice do you have for other educators listening who, maybe want to move into administration or move, like, say, like, I want to, get my master's or move towards my PhD?
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm grateful because my husband is a great spouse and partner and dad. And so if there's times where I'm just not able to be present or support our kiddos, him and my family and my in-laws have been really good about supporting our kiddos. But also there's times like I just drag my kids to school. There's a couple days where my 8-year-old did not have school and he was my little helper for the day, or like I'm dragging kids to the football and basketball games. And so again, like we spend as educators, this is like our second home because we spend a lot of hours in these buildings. And so it's really nice to have those opportunities where like both your home and your family kind of can collide and they can really see what you experience and also feel that sense of community too. I would just say for transitioning in, it's just when I go home, I turn the phone off, and if I need to check email, I'll do it like after bedtime. So I'm really being present for my kiddos, and really like we're having conversations at dinner, we're reading stories, we do movie nights on Friday. So just having those structures in place, and really prioritizing the time for them so that they get 100% of me to the best of my ability. Obviously, some days are not 100%, but just getting the most of me that they can so that they feel a connection and love when I am not impeded by other responsibilities.
I love that. Turning off your phone. That's a power move. That's really good.
Put the phone down in the kitchen, and then I'm usually up on like on my second floor. And so if somebody needs me, the phone is not near me, and you're gonna have to wait.
I love that. Okay, last one, unless of course Mandy thinks of another. Last one for me. Where do you go in for your own edification, your own content? Whether it's a recent book you've loved or a thought leader that you're following, what's filling your cup these days?
I would say two things. I've been rereading James Clear's Atomic Habits, just thinking about this new role and what habits I need to create as a new school leader in a new community. So that's been really helpful to reevaluate what I'm doing and what I need to put into place. I've also kind of used it for teachers too, right? If we think about teachers trying a new skill and having that become really second nature for them and not for them to think about, just thinking through like how do we use coaching and support and really making systems in place for teachers to also have good habits so that whatever skill you want them to work on isn't not disappear when you leave the room or when you're not co-planning with them. I'd also say that a really big book that I read this year that has been really shifted the way I think about instruction is Rhoda Hammond's book, Rebuilding Students' Learning Power. I had an opportunity to do a couple of professional development sessions with her throughout the course of the year based on the book with our teachers here at my previous school, and just reading about what it means for students to be independent thinkers and what are some systems and structures that teachers need to put in place so that we're, especially again for multilingual learners, just because you give them the sentence started in September does not mean they need it in April. And so like, how do we think about reducing over scaffolding so kids have second nature for a lot of those skills, either for content or language, and really thinking through what are some routines that students can become in place so that it doesn't matter where they are in the world, they're able to really be thoughtful and to think through what's in front of them to be, again, excellent human beings, but also empowered adults.
Love it. Always a learner. You're always a learner, I can tell.
This has been such a delightful conversation. It's been wonderful to get to know you, and I'm really excited for you in this new chapter you're starting for your teachers. And you will have to check in and let us know how those, I'm calling them family dinners, but the potluck, I think you got a great year ahead of you, and there's no doubt that all of the humility that you're bringing into this new role, and you mentioned multiple times, just learn and listen. I think you're going to have a great year. So thank you, Dr. Wilkinson, for your time and for joining the ML Chat podcast.